talking about endoscopy versus tubular discectomy, a battle of precision and recovery. Lumbar disc herniation is a common cause of low back pain and radicular symptoms of patients presenting to any spine outpatient department. Compression of nerve root by the herniated nucleus pulposus of the disc and the associated inflammatory reaction are the two crucial factors that result in disabling lumbosacral radicular syndrome. Although the conservative trial relieves the pain in most of the cases, around 15 to 20% fail to improve, necessitating surgical management. This study aims to compare the functional outcome, radiological parameters, and perioperative metrics of these techniques. A retrospective analysis was conducted on 20 patients who underwent endoscopic and minimal invasive tubular discectomy for symptomatic lumbar disc herniation. The functional outcome was measured using a visual analog scale for back pain and leg pain and ODI score at 3 months and 6 months. Radiological outcome in the form of disc height preservation and adequate neural decompression was taken, and perioperative matrix such as operative duration and intraoperative blood loss was taken. The inclusion criteria was the age was between 18 to 65 years. A single level lumbar disc herniation was taken, and failure, at least a conservative trial was given for at least 6 weeks. Exclusion criteria is recurrent disc herniation if it's there, multiple level disc herniation and previous lumbar surgeries, any instability, or patient with neurological deficits. It was compared in 3 groups, function outcome, radio, and perimetric analysis. The demographic elements were, the mean age in both the groups was around 42 and 44. The duration of the symptoms were around 6 months. Then the functional outcome, there was no significant difference noted at the end of 6 months, but at the end of 3 months, endoscopic discectomy showed comparatively better relief of back pain, whereas ODI score was better in endoscopic discectomy at the end of 6 months. In the radiological department, the disc height change was less in endoscopic discectomy as compared to tubular, and neural decompression was done better in tubular discectomy. In perioperative metrics, operative time was more in endoscopic, and blood loss was less in endoscopic, and hospital stay was not comparative, and complications in both the cases, at least one dural tear we got. Results both endoscopic and tubular discectomy showed substantial improvement in VAS and ODI score over the follow-up period, indicating effective symptomatic relief. At 3 months, endoscopic showed a better, faster recovery and greater pain reduction. Radiologically, endoscopic discectomy showed better disc height preservation and enhancing spinal stability, while tubular achieved marginally greater neural decompression. Perioperatively, endoscopic had a longer operative time and reduced blood loss and shorter hospital stay. Conclusion, endoscopic and tubular discectomy are both efficacious for managing lumbar disc herniation with unique strengths tailored to the patient's specific needs. Endoscopic discectomy has advantages for those prioritizing minimal invasiveness and rapid recovery, but on a long-term aspect, both procedures provide a similar outcome.
Thank you, Dr. Pranay. Next, I would like to call Dr. Sahil Garg on stage, please.
Hi, how are you? My name is Sahil. I'm a fourth-year medical student over in the United States, and I work with Dr. Sunny Gill and Dr. Michael Galizzi out in Colorado, and I'm going to be presenting a study that we did in conjunction with SMISS in 2023. We were given a grant for this. And so, thanks for everyone's attention and appreciate being here. So just quickly to go over disclosures. I don't have any that are relevant to this talk in particular. So essentially, as a learner, as a researcher, with all the buzz around endoscopic spine surgery, I had the question of how minimally invasive do we really need to go? There's a lot of research now that's been suggesting that going from an open approach to a muscle sparing, or maybe you've heard of the Wiltse incisions, is substantial, especially with like postoperative pain, looking at around 2 weeks and even up to 3 months. However, biomechanically there's an advantage there. And so the question is, if you go even further minimally invasive, you're still following similar tissue planes that are minimally invasive and muscle sparing in nature. Does that additional decrease in essentially working channel play a role in outcomes at the end of the day? And so really, does the smaller incision mean better outcomes always? And so this is just a quick video here of an endoscopic uniportal approach to for a decompression here on the right. And then here's kind of some pictures showing how much can come out with just a uniportal approach. And then that there on just to the left of the video, that's a microscope that's traditionally used for tubular approaches. So this is a prospective study. There are 30 subjects kind of randomized to either an endoscopic arm or a tubular arm. And then they met standard indications for surgery, neurological weakness, pain and weakness that's essentially not being treated with conservative management. And so our aim was to see, is there any difference in patient-reported outcomes as the first part of the study, but then additionally, is there any difference in inflammation and true muscle damage? So we did that, and we examined that using muscle dissection through serum creatinine kinase, and then, surgical duration, blood loss, all that kind of stuff as well. So here's our current enrollment status, and we look forward to kind of concluding this at the SMISS annual convention this year in Las Vegas. We currently have 14 people or subjects in the tubular group and 5 in the endoscopic group. Here's some of our baseline PROs. So, I was talking with some of the faculty here. It seems like ODI is really traditionally used in India. Over where, with the studies being conducted, we use additionally PROMISE. It's kind of a global approach to examining disability through the NIH and some of those initiatives. And so the reason I brought this up is just to show you that there's homogeneity amongst groups in regards to baseline. So we hope that, at follow-up at about 1 year, once we're fully enrolled, it'll give us some good insight into PROs. But really, if you look at the physical health score, so PH, that's for physical health, and then MH is for mental health, you can see here that the PROMISE health for physical health is much lower for these patients. And really the reason that's important is to give you some insight into kind of what my mentors are thinking in terms of patient selection. They really believe that the physical components of disability are much more important in patient selection and predictors of good outcomes. So, if you have a patient with severe disability and true neurological weakness, that is likely going to lead to better outcomes for your patients and a happier patient and overall postoperatively. These are just some general criteria for PROMISE, just to increase awareness. It doesn't seem like this is used traditionally in India, but if you hear about it, then hopefully this increases awareness that way. This is really the meat and bones of the topic, though, and this is what's really interesting to me, is when we look at the serum creatinine kinase across tubular and endoscopic approaches, the endoscopic arm had actually 0 observable serum creatinine kinase, so that's 0 units per liter. That's really remarkable. I mean, that's none, essentially, and these are half intralaminar and half transforaminal. So just give some future direction as studies continue to be open to enrollment. And we like to compare the results at 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Does that decrease in postoperative muscle dissection, that little bit, that average of 31 units per liter, does that translate to decreased pain, maybe decreased narcotic consumption? We have to see. And just some further learning, these are 2 great textbooks. A little biased here, have some chapters coming out in these. And then obviously the one on the left here is sponsored by SMISS. But these are some great texts if you're interested more in learning about some of the biomechanical advantages of minimally invasive surgery or some of the expanding indications for endoscopic spine surgery aside from decompressions. These would be great resources. And so thank you again for your sincere time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you. We'll take the questions at the end. I would like to call Dr. Prithvi on stage, please.
Good evening, one and all. Today's my topic is about multifidus muscle. How does it matter? Is it minimal damage, maximum early multifidus recovery? I'll have 2 techniques. It's microscopic lumbar discectomy and unilateral biportal endoscopy. Comparative study evaluating trends in the spine surgery is from open surgery to micro discectomies to endoscopes, either interlaminar, uniportal or biportal. The purpose of this evaluation is only for the minimal invasiveness, maximum visualization and early recovery. The key concept is to minimize the damage to the multifidus muscle. The multifidus muscle is a stabilizer of the spine, is a core muscle. Maximum the atrophy, more the back pain, late and less the recovery. So the surgery can damage the multifidus muscle with, if it is higher, the atrophy is high with the chronic back pain and late recovery. In the literature, there are studies comparing open discectomies with tubular discectomies with interlaminar, open to full endoscopic approaches, biportal to tubular microdiscectomies, which as of during the evaluation, as everybody knows, to reduce the damage to the multifidus, this has been evolved, and they are completely different kind of approach to the interlaminar spaces. And there are no studies comparing biportal with the open microscopic discectomy. In our study included 40 patients with lumbar disc pathologies undergoing surgeries. They have been given both the options, and with their choice, 20 of them each divided into micro and UB groups. And MRIs were done at 15 days post the surgery and 3 months post the surgery. MRI images are acquired. Multifidus assessment has been looked for atrophy and the muscle mass. The multifidus muscle parameters that are measured included total cross-sectional area, lean cross-sectional area, and atrophied cross-sectional area. The percentage change in the atrophy of the muscle was considered as total cross-sectional minus lean cross-sectional to the ratio of total cross-sectional area, which is analyzed preoperatively as well as 15 days post-op and 3 months post-op. What is happening to the multifidus in these procedures? As you know, micro decompression, unilateral exposure, and you do unilateral ipsilateral laminectomy and over the top decompression to the other side. So as we observed, 2 weeks post-op, in the micro decompression cases, there is approximately about on an average 75% damage to the exposed side of the muscle. But at 3 months of the follow-up, it is still persisting at 55% damage. The recovery is little less. Whereas in multifidus, 2 portals are created through the multifidus only in UB. In 2 weeks post-op, there was only 55% damage to the multifidus muscle on the ipsilateral side. And in 3 months, it was reduced to 18%. This is a comparison. In the pre-op, it was around 25 and 15 in micro and UB groups. At 2 weeks, it is about 75% atrophy of the muscle. And at 3 months, it is about 55%. Whereas in UB group, the muscle damage was up to 55 at 2 weeks of post-op, and it got reduced to 18%, which is almost near normal to the preoperative status. The percentage of the atrophied muscle in the multifidus recovered to the near preoperative status by 3 months in patients undergoing unilateral biportal endoscopy. I conclude that unilateral biportal endoscopic discectomy showed superior results compared to the microlumbar discectomies by minimal multifidus damage and early recovery of the muscle to the pre-op status and lower incidence of the chronic back pain secondary to the atrophy. It is one of the first of its kind in literature comparing multifidus changes in early postoperative period between microlumbar discectomies and UB. Thank you.